So also with us, economist at the London School of Economics, Daniel Chandler. He's the author of the book Free and Equal, a manifesto for a just society. He wrote a new piece for the New York Times entitled, "The Democrats Are in Trouble. This man can save them." So tell us about who can save the Dems.
It's good. The New York Times people, they do a good headline. So, in a way, it might surprise you because the person who I think can save the Democrats is a philosopher rather than a politician. So the person that my article is inspired by, and the same is true as my book, is the philosopher John Rawls, who, he's not a household name, but he is by far the towering figure of 20th century political philosophy. And, he completely revolutionized liberal thinking. But my interest in Rawls and why I think he has a lot to offer now is not, this is not historical or intellectual, it's political. And I think what you get from Rawls is a hopeful and constructive vision of what, a more fair and just society would look like. And, picking up on the conversation so far, I really agree with most of the, all of the discussion so far. But, most of it is the discussion has mostly been diagnostic. There's a kind of analysis of how and why the Democrats have ended up in the situation where they are, where they have alienated working class voters, where they lack a kind of constructive vision of where they want to go. And in a sense, that's where my article and my book, Free and Equal, picks up. It tries to sort of say that the future of the Democratic Party rests not on just assembling the biggest possible anti-Trump coalition, but on kind of reclaiming their soul, on finding a sense of what it is that they stand for. And I think that Rawls can help them do that. And then what we need to do is connect, abstract philosophy that you get from thinkers like Rawls with practical ideas for how we could actually transform America's political and economic institutions for the better.
Well, and April Ryan, I mean, that's a lot of people are sitting there going, wait a second, why are Democrats losing working class white voters? Why are Democrats losing working class Hispanic voters? Why are Democrats even losing some working class black voters, especially black men? It was overstated about black men, the degree, but there's no doubt there is a trend that Democrats are losing a lot of people that have been their base for a long time. Why do you think that is?
Tone deafness. At this point, you have to think about this. Politics is personal and it's also pocketbook. This is not new, though, for Black America, for Latino America, for those who are underserved. Think about the 1960s. Think about the March on Washington with Dr. King. Think about if Robert Kennedy Sr. and Dr. Martin Luther King would have lived, they would have dealt with issues of poverty. And one thing that I did ask Robert Kennedy Jr. at the debate in Philadelphia, after the debate in the spin room, I said, what if your father and Dr. King had lived, they were dealing with the issue of poverty? Who is the president that would deal with that issue more so than the other? And he said Donald Trump. Which was surprising to hear that, as Democrats are thought to be the ones who deal with this. And they are imploding now because of this, because of the tone deafness that so many people have told them about, and they didn't listen.
So, Donnie, we're 3 weeks now since the election. Some of these lessons are starting to sink in. The Democratic soul searching is well underway. To April's point there, let's use her phrase, the tone deafness. And as the Rev noted, the Democrats, not all, but have done some policy work to help those people, but the people who need it. And yet they don't believe it. They don't see it. They don't accept it. And certainly Democrats could do more. And there's an impulse to just go for the change candidate, which Donald Trump fashioned himself to be. But in terms of the messaging of trying to say, hey, we hear you. It's not just a one-way street. We're hearing you. What can they do better?
Messenger versus messaging. Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Donald Trump. They had and have the ability to turn to voters and say, I feel your pain. I'm going to solve your problem, regardless, in the case of Donald Trump, that he is part of the other side of the equation. He is one of the rich guys. He has the ability, as did Ronald Reagan, as did Bill Clinton, as did Barack Obama. It's the way a person communicates, how they connect. So we can talk all we want about policy, because I guarantee if you look up on the Democratic platform, it was all there. All the message was there. The Democrats need a transformational figure. They need that figure that can connect. So we can philosophically talk all we want about messaging that's off. They had the better message.
Yeah, okay, so I get this. I'm sorry.
Richard, I don't think agrees with the Trump, but I
Let me say one thing. I mean, what's the great ladder in American society is not necessarily redistribution. A lot of this conversation doesn't leave me wildly comfortable. It's opportunity. It's making the American dream real. It's opportunity. You want to do it? How about improving the quality of public schools? That is the principal ladder in American society. And when did the Democrats in this election, maybe I missed it, Donnie, when did they talk about public education? And the answer is they can't. Why can't they? Because of teachers' unions. When the Democratic Party...
Public education going to override inflation and immigration and those gut issues?
No. Well, the answer is you want to talk to the American people, talk about their kids, talk about schools. That is the way we are going to make opportunity real in this country. I'm happy taxing carried interest, but get serious about opportunity.
Well, here's the thing, though, Kurt. I am a capitalist. I am a proud capitalist, but I am a proud capitalist with guardrails that capitalism used to have. And I understand people don't want to talk about income redistribution. I'm not a big fan of income redistribution. And I'm especially not a big fan when the income is being moved from middle-class Americans to billionaires. And that has been happening for 4 decades, really 3 decades in earnest. I know you talk about Ronald Reagan a lot, but really it started with Democrats in the 90s, the Rubin Democrats, when suddenly it was hard to tell the difference between Republicans and Democrats. And carried interest matters. The fact that billionaires just continue to get richer and richer, and they pay a lower tax rate than their clerical workers, that matters. And what I'm not talking about winning elections. I'm talking about rebuilding the middle class of America. So if gas prices go up 10, 15, 20%, whatever it may do over the next couple of years, they can afford it without wondering how they're going to pay for the groceries.
Yeah. Capitalism was working just fine from the end of World War II through the 70s. And that's because all the boats, more or less, were rising together as we prospered. That ended. And that ended because your former party, with the complicity of a lot of Democrats, concentrated on changing that. Now, Chris Murphy, the senator from Connecticut, had great interviews recently in which he says, as more than a diagnosis, as Daniel said, Democrats have to reverse what they've done, which is Democrats, Harris, all of them, spend 80% of their time with these kind of fine-tuned, wonky policy things. I have a plan. Here's the plan. Well, and they're civil and they're pearl-clutching Mitt Romney-esque in their style, which kind of can't go on. So instead of having 80% about your policy wonk details and 20% of like, hey, I'm angry, this is a kind of a rigged system, they should reverse that and do what Donald Trump does, but also make good on the deliverables of that, right? To be economic populists, real economic populists, which they have moved to, which they're becoming, but then with the message and the messengers that become the message, whether it's John Fetterman, whether it's Bernie Sanders, whether it's Anthony Delgado, whether it's, we could name them, Jared Golden in Maine, whatever. And if they're left or moderate, it doesn't matter if they can win by being and seeming, kind of walking the walk as well as talking the talk.
So, Daniel, it's not just the United States where the party in power lost. We have seen in democratic nations throughout the globe where incumbents have either lost or at least their party has been dramatically weakened. So let's take this from a global perspective. What are some of these lessons that could apply in those capitals as well?
Yeah, I think you're right that that sort of challenge to liberal democracy is a global phenomenon too. And I think, in a sense, the struggle that mainstream progressive parties like the Democrats in the States, but also the Labour Party in the UK or the Social Democratic Party in Germany, I think the struggle that they have had is that they haven't had a positive vision of their own with which they can counteract the rising forces of authoritarian populism. And, just coming back to the conversation so far, I think part of the problem is this very narrow focus on redistribution, the redistribution of money as the solution to all of the problems with capitalism as we know it. And I think part of what's so appealing about Rawls's philosophy is that he recognizes that, economic justice is not only about money. It's about whether people have opportunities for self-respect and dignity, chances to contribute to economic life, and to participate in communities. And I think once you recognize this broader vision of what economic justice is about, you see that the kinds of policies we need are not just about taxing and redistributing. And I think they would point towards the bolder economic ideas that I think Kurt was just suggesting that we need. And that would be things like massive investment in vocational education. So in the UK, people have a lifelong entitlement now, which gives them equal access to grants, whether they're vocational or in the academic sphere. We could also look at policies like putting workers on the boards of companies so that they have a genuine say over how those companies are run. And then I think the final thing, which, to be fair, President Biden moved in this direction by really harnessing the power of industrial strategy to create good jobs. And I think, it's this kind of collection of much bigger, bolder policies that try to change the structure of our economic system and not just to tweak around the edges or compensate people for its failings through shifting money around. That, it's that kind of vision that we need if we want to restore people's faith in capitalism and in liberal democracy and counter the threat of authoritarian populism.
All right. Daniel Chandler, thank you very much. His piece for the New York Times is available to read now online. And Kurt Andersen, thank you as well. His book, Evil Geniuses, The Unmaking of America, is a New York Times bestseller.
Kurt, come back for another week or two sometime.
Yeah, so April